Fan Man-yee was the victim of one of the most horrific crimes in Hong Kong's history. She was kidnapped and held captive by a group of individuals, enduring the worst atrocities imaginable. However, the case truly gained international notoriety when the details of what happened to her after her death were revealed. It is a deeply disturbing case involving a troubled life, robbery, torture, and a Hello Kitty plushie. Fan Man-yee was born in Shenzhen, China. Her life was marked by hardship from the very beginning. Abandoned by her parents at birth, she was raised in an orphanage. She never had contact with her biological family, and no records of them exist. The orphanage where she lived had an age limit of 15. As soon as she turned 15, she had to leave the institution. Having never been adopted, she found herself homeless. Alone and living in poverty, Fan Man-yee followed a path common to many in her situation. She sought an escape from reality and found it in drugs. Now struggling with addiction and living on the streets with no prospects for the future, extreme circumstances led her into sex work. By age 20, she was dancing in karaoke nightclubs, relying on even more substances to numb herself to the strangers who exploited her. At one point, she fell in love with a frequent client. This man was also an addict, and their shared addiction only spiraled. They married in 1996, but within months, Fan Man-yee's husband became violent. He grew increasingly aggressive and frequently assaulted her. She endured the abuse in exchange for finally having a family. Over the next few years, they had 2 children together. However, the birth of the children only worsened their chaotic environment. Neighbors described endless nights of the couple screaming at each other while the children cried. In 1997, Fan Man-yee was working at an establishment called Romance Villa in Kowloon. It was there that she met 34-year-old Chan Man-lok. Chan came from a wealthy, well-structured family and was well known in the region, unfortunately for all the wrong reasons. He was a drug dealer and a pimp. He was the one pulling the strings behind the city's nightlife scene. Fan Man-yee caught Chan's eye, and they spent many nights together. He provided the drugs, she provided her body. Chan's specialty was methamphetamine, commonly known as ice. He was always surrounded by henchmen and women, not because of fame, but because of power. Fan Man-yee became a familiar face to these henchmen, and to outsiders, she appeared to be part of the group. However, Chan was not just a common dealer, he was a member of the Triads. The Triads are a criminal organization often compared to the Italian mafia or the Yakuza. The term refers to the San He Hui, symbolizing the union of heaven, earth, and humanity. They are a powerful criminal group with almost limitless resources and contacts. When dealing with organizations of this scale, there is only one thing worse than opposing them: stealing from them. Fan Man-yee became too comfortable around the group, and during one of their meetings, she stole Chan's wallet. She took the equivalent of about 20,000 Hong Kong dollars. Chan found out and confronted her, eventually demanding a debt of $50,000. Fan Man-yee claimed she would pay in installments through her work. This wasn't enough for Chan, who was furious, not because of the money, but because of her audacity to steal from him. Justice in the criminal underworld moves quickly and follows its own rules of execution. In March 1999, 2 of Chan's henchmen approached Fan Man-yee and forced her into a car. She was taken to an apartment at 31 Granville Road in Tsim Sao Tsui in Hong Kong. It was a luxury building, and the apartment had 5 rooms. One of them was decorated entirely with Hello Kitty. The reason for the room's theme remains unknown. The curtains, cabinets, rugs, and furniture were all pink and bore the brand's logo. Fan Man-yee was kidnapped and locked in this room. Chan's initial goal was to keep her locked there, forcing her to work 24 hours a day until the $50,000 debt was paid. However, Chan was greedy, and no amount was ever enough. Whenever she got close to paying it off, he would increase the debt. Chan doubled the amount several times until it became impossible to pay. Beyond forcing her to see an absurd number of clients daily, Chan also encouraged his gang to take out their frustrations on her. She would see a client, be physically assaulted, and then the next man would enter the room. Eventually, she was beaten so severely that she could no longer work. She existed in a state of constant assault. The gang members began to enjoy the violence, laughing as they tortured her. The situation had spiraled out of control long before authorities became aware, and it was about to deteriorate further. The group responsible for holding Fan Man-yee against her will included Chan Man-lok, 34, Long Wai-loon, between 19 and 21, Long Xing-cho, 26, and a 14-year-old girl known by the pseudonym Ah Fong. Some accounts indicated she was connected to Chan, while others suggested she was also being manipulated within the group. Regardless of her exact role, witnesses noted she displayed disturbing behavior for someone her age. She was present during the mistreatment and reportedly showed little empathy toward the victim. Ah Fong was described as suggesting various forms of psychological and physical abuse. Chan repeatedly cited an alleged debt as justification for the escalating mistreatment each time the victim was brought back into the main area of the apartment. Fan Man-yee was restrained for extended periods and subjected to repeated physical violence by multiple individuals. She endured severe beatings with objects found in the apartment, was suspended from fixtures against her will, and suffered numerous injuries over time. According to testimony, she was struck violently many times throughout her captivity. Her health declined significantly during this period. Her captors applied substances to her injuries and used heat sources in ways that caused additional harm and restricted her mobility. She was also forced to consume unsanitary substances on multiple occasions and compelled to express false contentment under threat of further punishment. Resistance to these demands resulted in intensified mistreatment. While this ordeal continued, Fan Man-yee's husband and children desperately searched for her after she vanished without explanation. Authorities initially struggled to locate her due to a lack of concrete leads. Her captors repurposed everyday household items to inflict suffering. In later statements, Ah Fong characterized the ongoing abuse as resembling a disturbing form of entertainment. When the victim failed to display the expected emotional responses, the severity of the mistreatment increased. The group eventually ceased providing regular meals, and she spent prolonged periods restrained in elevated positions. Her physical state deteriorated to the point where she could no longer perform expected tasks. Chan reportedly remained indifferent, often remaining in an adjacent room while she lost consciousness repeatedly. According to Ah Fong's account, the group's engagement in violent acts diminished over time as the victim became less responsive, though mistreatment continued intermittently. She explained that with little else occurring in their confined environment, the behavior persisted out of habit and boredom. On one occasion, the group departed the apartment to go out socially. Their standard procedure when leaving was to secure Fan Man-yee in a confined space to prevent any possibility of escape. By this stage, her physical condition had deteriorated so severely that an attempt to flee would have been nearly impossible. On April 15, 1999, Fan Man-yee's body finally gave out. She passed away from complications related to her numerous injuries, dying alone in that bathroom while the group was at a bar. They returned a few days later and discovered her body while trying to move her. They decided they needed to dispose of the remains but were in no hurry. They left the apartment to discuss the matter while playing arcade games nearby. Then they returned to the apartment and went to sleep. The next morning, after consuming a large amount of drugs, Chan summoned his gang. They dragged the body to the bathtub and dismembered it using a hacksaw. The parts were placed in a freezer, which was later removed from the apartment. After dismembering her, they boiled the remains. Ah Fong, who was asleep, was woken up by Chan shaking human remains in front of her face. The teenager then got up and helped with the process. Long Xing-cho was responsible for boiling the victim's head, showing it to Ah Fong as if it were a joke. The entire process lasted approximately 10 hours. During this time, one of the members claimed he was hungry. He took one of the pots used in the process and began preparing instant noodles. He used the same unwashed spoon to stir both his food and the remains. After this act, which would be condemned even by other criminal organizations, only the skull remained. Inside the room were several Hello Kitty items, including a mermaid-shaped plushie. One of the criminals had the idea to cut the plushie open and sew the skull inside. This required considerable effort, and the motive remains unknown. Regardless, this detail gave the case the name by which it is now infamous. The boiled remains were discarded in the building's trash. Fan Man-yee's children, meanwhile, had spent a month weeping for a mother who would never return. A month passed with no leads. However, everything changed in May. Fong walked into a police station to make a very strange statement. With eyes full of terror, she claimed she was being haunted by a ghost. The officers looked at each other, unsure how to react. They were about to dismiss her when she said something that made them stop in their tracks. She said the ghost was a woman, the same woman she had helped kill. The same hand that was pushing her out of the station now pulled her in. They demanded more information, and Ah Fong led the officers to the apartment. Inside, she pointed to the Hello Kitty plushie. The officers cut it open and found the skull. Ah Fong agreed to answer questions on site and provided the context of what had happened. All members of the group were located and arrested. It was only then that the police learned the full details. Ah Fong is not her real name. It was a pseudonym used by the state in public documents because she was a minor. At the station, she claimed to be Chan's girlfriend and spent hours describing the events in the apartment. She agreed to testify against the others. When asked about the motive, Ah Fong couldn't give one. According to her, it was just for fun. This suggested she was unaware of the stolen wallet, which of course does not justify such barbarity. The case received massive coverage in Hong Kong. The contrast between such an absurd crime and an icon of innocence like Hello Kitty was what captured the public's attention most. The trial lasted approximately 6 months. Ah Fong testified against her accomplices in exchange for immunity. She recounted every detail of the attacks in court, claiming she was doing so to rid herself of the ghost and expressing remorse for her actions. The police seized several items from the apartment, including the refrigerator used to store the remains, the pots, and the skull. Chan Man-lok, Leung Wai-lun, and Leung Shing-cho were evaluated by psychiatrists. While the full report was never published, it is known that none of them showed any remorse. However, the investigation faced a major hurdle. Aside from the skull, there was no body. Without it, it was impossible to scientifically confirm Ah Fong's claims regarding the cause of death. The men claimed the victim died of a drug overdose. As a result, all 3 were found guilty of manslaughter rather than murder, as intent to kill could not be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. The jury agreed the group caused her death but could not reach a consensus on whether it was intentional. The judge, however, was not so lenient and handed down the maximum sentence. In December 2000, the 3 men were sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum of 20 years before the possibility of parole. Hong Kong had abolished the death penalty in 1993, so it was not an option. Had the crime occurred in mainland China, all 3 would likely have been executed. Ah Fong fulfilled her part of the deal and was released. She was moved to an undisclosed orphanage and is now a free woman. In 2003, the defense lawyers appealed for a reduced sentence but were unsuccessful. In 2014, with the case closed, the police returned Fan Man-yee's skull to her family, who chose to cremate it. The apartment building where the murder occurred was demolished in September 2012. In 2016, a hotel was built on the site, which remains in operation today. In April 2014, Leung Shing-cho was granted parole after serving his minimum sentence. His lawyer was apparently the most skilled, and he was the only one to leave prison. He remained on parole until he ran afoul of the law again. In January 2022, while working as a waiter, he was arrested for the indecent assault of a minor. He was sentenced to 12 months in prison. He served his time and is currently free. Since the tragedy, every year on the anniversary of Fan Man-yee's death, people gather in central Hong Kong to keep her memory alive with a vigil of flowers and candles. She had an incredibly difficult life, married to an abuser, and involved with the wrong people. She left behind 2 children who never even had a body to bury. It is impossible to imagine the pain she endured. Fan Man-yee grew up alone and died alone. Today, at age 52, Leung Shing-cho is a free man. He left prison in August 2023 after serving his sentence for the assault on the minor. He is currently on parole and must report to a police station frequently. At 47 years old, Leung Wai-lun is incarcerated at Stanley Prison, a maximum security facility in Hong Kong, serving his life sentence. To date, all of his parole requests have been denied. At 60 years old, Chan Man-lok remains in the same prison. His parole requests have also been denied. It is highly likely that both will spend the rest of their lives behind bars.